The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink, and today we're being joined by a friend of mine, Troy Fenner, and he is the SVP of Human Resources at Roku, and we're excited to have him here today. Love the Roku products, and love the Fenners. I've got Troy and Carla are good friends, and we've had some fun together on the golf course, at casinos, all kinds of good stuff. And we've happened to do some business together as well. So you're living in La Quinta. That's down in the desert, right?
I am in La Quinta now. It was funny. It's like we were Bay Area people. We moved to San Jose January 2nd, 2001, and we're there forever. And then when we bought a second home down here, because Carla and I are big golfers, and then when the pandemic hit, I left San Jose March 15th and didn't go back. So we're down here. We're desert dwellers right now.
Well, you were some of the first to make the mass exodus. Everybody's leaving.
There is a lot, but what we're seeing is from a tech standpoint. Like every company, even though they're saying, hey, everyone can go wherever they want to and work remotely, which will be a trend for some companies. Silicon Valley existed for a reason, and people will come back, and people will show up again in offices, and it'll just keep growing.
Yeah, not everybody's leaving, but
not everyone.
Like our house is up in South Lake Tahoe and State Line. And the values of homes are just skyrocketing. It's probably the same down in La Quinta, right?
It has. You've got a lot of exodus out of LA area where people are coming down here. But it's very interesting down here is you'll get a lot of people that will come down and rent homes for long periods of times, like besides the snowbirds, but the new snowbirds are like people out of Seattle or Vancouver who kids are at home and it's starting their rainy season, and the parents want a swim pool and some place for the kids to go get outside and drive them crazy. So you're seeing a new influx down here. But, I'm hearing too, back in the Bay Area, a lot of people are leaving San Francisco, but houses are selling really fast too up in the Bay Area again. So dirt's still expensive in California. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. But getting out of the cities, that's common right now. Yeah.
So you and I have something else in common is Illinois. So you grew up in Chicago.
I was, we're Midwestern boys. I was born in Chicago and grew up a lot in the northwest suburbs, and then my dad, who is an engineer and a plant manager, his job got transferred out into southern Illinois. So I went from Chicago to a town of 550 people in southern Illinois, and then went into the thriving metropolis of Corydon, Iowa. And so then I grew up in Iowa, different parts of Iowa. So Midwest through and through here. So
I grew up in Northwest Illinois in a town about 1,500 people, and I love Chicago. What suburbs did you grow up in?
After the city, it was northwest suburbs. So I grew up in, most of my time up in the northwest suburbs was a little town called Antioch, which was right on the Wisconsin-Illinois border. So called the Chain of Lakes area. So, just lots of little lakes and everything out there. And yeah, that was home for me, and I'm trying to remember, it's probably similar size to what you grew up in. You're 50 minutes, 60 minutes from, being downtown Chicago. You were, 15 minutes being into Wisconsin or whatever like that. So it was just, kind of what you thought, growing up in the Midwest kind of experience.
Well, I looked up on your LinkedIn where you went to college, And I saw that was in Wisconsin, but it was just over the border, right?
If you could find that on the map, you're a geography major. Let me just tell you there. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't take the regular college track. I mean, when because my dad's job ended up eventually in Iowa, and I went like a semester at the University of Iowa. Then I went about 4 years at Northern Iowa and loved Northern Iowa. But I was on summertime, I was working back in Chicago and during the summer. And my like senior year or whatever, I got offered a job, and they said they would finish paying for my college and everything like that. And for any of you who are listening who believe that a company will do that and give you the time off to go to college, I'd say finish college, then go work. And so it wasn't like an immediately, but eventually I finished up my degree at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, which was a great experience, a good school. But when you follow my transcripts, you're like, oh, well, how many colleges did you need to go to, Troy, in order to graduate? But I finished. That's the important thing.
That's right. So being from Chicago, there's a question.
Yep.
Cubs or White Sox?
North Sider or South Sider? That's the question all the time. And I am a Cub fan. I have a genetic disorder. I'm a Cub fan through and through. And it's funny. It's like if I ever interview a candidate, I always scare them in the beginning, because if they're from Illinois or Chicago, I go, North Sider or South Sider? This could dictate whether you get hired here. And right. No, grew up a North Sider, and was a Cub fan before it was cool. And but yeah, grew up on the North Side.
I just remember all those restaurants and bars that I would go to with my dad back in the day, and they always had the signs. They always had the signs hanging. Well, where I grew up in Mount Carroll, that was about 3 hours straight west of Chicago before you got into Iowa. But everybody's Cubs fans around there, so they always had the signs hanging on the wall. That one side said, "Holy cow, we won!" Harry Carey. And the other side said, "Oh shit, we lost."
That is a Cub fan, And usually at the "oh shit, we lost" is usually around September or October when that sign comes up.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's so funny growing up in the Midwest. There was so much of your life revolved around sports, and whether it was Cubs, White Sox, picking up the Brewers or St. Louis Cardinals on late night radio, that you snuck into your bed so your parents wouldn't know. And then, then football season, but your life really dictated because of the weather. It's like, it's snowing, I'm going to go inside and play basketball or wrestle or something. If the sun comes out, let's go out and play football or baseball. But that was just like, it was just part of the weather cycle, I think, for us.
Well, doing some research, I saw that you were also a Hawkeye fan.
I am still a Hawkeye fan. I mean, even though I went there, when you're living in Iowa, it was funny. It's like there's only the Iowa. The joke is Iowa Hawkeyes is the only professional team in Iowa. To go see. So,
right.
You're either at a kind of like an Iowa or an Iowa State fan. And even though I went to Northern Iowa, and they have a great football team and great sports program there. Even then, as much you loved Northern Iowa, it seemed like everybody also had a secondary affiliation. But always been a big fan of, started watching, Hawkeyes and everything when Hayden Fry was the coach from back then, now the current era. And we were fortunate in December going down to San Diego and watch them play in the Holiday Bowl. And if there's any USC fans listening, I apologize wholeheartedly that we destroyed you, but it made my Christmas. Let me just tell you.
Damn right. So I got some friends of mine from back there that are. I got family members, friends that go to every home game, back there, and I just absolutely love when everybody turns around and waves at the kids up in the hospital.
It's a great tradition for people who don't know about that. At the end of the first quarter, there's the Children's Hospital that built a big observatory so the kids that are in the hospital can watch the football game. And they started a first quarter tradition where the fans turn around at the end of the quarter and wave at all the kids in the hospital, and the players on the field stop and wave. And now it's become such a big deal that even the visiting players will turn and wave to the kids. So it's pretty emotional. But a good Midwest, awesome. It just tells you everything about the Midwest you'd like to know about.
Yeah, exactly. I got a couple of guys that I employ that are both from the Cedar Rapids area, And when I interviewed them, we started talking about, just those Midwest values. And, I've met plenty of people all over the country who I absolutely adore, but there's just something about those Midwest folks there's a kinship between us all that just kind of goes past anything else. You just say Midwest and boom, you got something to talk about and something to, you can kind of trust that person a little bit more, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. It's similar to you. I mean, I grew up in recruiting like you before we moved in human resources. So you interview people from all over the world and everything like that. And there's great people everywhere, hardworking people everywhere. But there's a kinship when you tell someone from from the Midwest, and because you share a lot of similar stories. You probably grew up in a farm community. Your life revolved around your high school growing up, and family was in church on Sunday, and where I grew up in Iowa, I mean, the kids had a choice of either going to work at the go work at the meat plant, to work in the slaughterhouse, go become farmers, or go join the military. So there was like this big military also growing up in that background in our families out there. And so I just think it's easy for people that space to resonate with each other pretty quickly.
Well, I think back to baling hay, and
oh dear goodness.
If you haven't baled hay a day in your life, then you haven't actually worked. I'm a big dude, as you know, and it's like I could either work back then. I think minimum wage was either $2.75 or $3.25 an hour, something like that. 3.25
probably.
Yeah, 3.25, or I could go bale hay for $10 an hour, and it's like it got done with that, and then the farmer I was working for bring out a 12-pack of beer at the end of the day. I'm like, perfect.
I love this job, yeah, and $10 an hour. You thought you were a king.
Oh, I was the king for the weekend.
Absolutely. No, the hardest farm job, and we weren't farmers. My dad was an engineer, but the places where he was working at happened to be in rural areas, and I was bored and had nothing to do, so I'd hang out with the farm kids and help them out because I was stupid. I was like, yeah, sure, I can go do this. And the hardest job I ever did was, you had to walk the fence lines, because barbed wire fences would fall down from the winter or whatever like that, or a cow would knock it down or whatever like that. And just walking out in the pastures and lifting barbed wired up and rewiring it. And you'd get done at the end of the day, and you'd have fence posts, manually driving fence posts, and you had no skin left on your hands at the end of the day. And then, here's your $20, kid. And I'm like, I'm rich, see you tomorrow, do it again. But there was always, and that and detasseling corn, that was the other.
Detasseling. Those people throwing the tassels at you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get whacked in the side of the head with a tassel?
Yeah, it doesn't take long for people to find out weapons of mass destruction in a cornfield. You can injure each other, but it was good times.
So what was your major when you went to Parkside?
Yeah, that was interesting. I got my degree in communication, not with an S like mass communications, but theory of communication. So okay. That was big for me, of how do organizations communicate, how do cultures communicate, do languages define cultures, do cultures define languages, different things like that. And so it was very heavy, a research-based kind of major for me. And I accidentally stumbled in it. I was supposed to go to business school because that's what my parents thought I should go do. And I absolutely hated it, found it like the most boring thing in the universe, and which is funny, now I'm an executive at a company, but at that time it was just like no interest in it. And I accidentally one day I remember being in northern Iowa, stopped in my friend's dorm room, and he had this book on the ground with some class that he took as an elective. I picked up the book, I started reading it, I thought it was interesting. The next day I snuck into class with him, and I changed my major, and then my parents found out about that, and we had a big knockdown, drag-out argument where
none too happy.
They decided not to pay for my education, and I said fine. And so I was working in restaurants cooking all night long, and I would show up to class smelling like a deep fat fryer the next day. And, for a period of time, even had to sleep out in my car because I couldn't afford, to stay someplace. So it was just, I found it interesting. I was passionate about it. And that's got my degree in it. And I still think it was like the greatest degree to get. Even though I'm like, I can't say it's like I'm a better HR person or better whatever because of it, but there's still things today when you talk about companies, about culture, how companies communicate, how how subcultures and things happen. A lot of those things I learned, accidentally, and can apply to every day. So I'm fortunate where I landed, but is when people have me come talk to interns, or they ask me, go talk to my kid. Could you talk to my kid about their college choices and everything? I always remind them, I go, I'm probably not the best role model to pick. It's like it was all accident for me. So,
well, it's interesting because, I'm going through and writing this book right now that's also called True Ambition. And, where there's a will, there's a way. And I was looking back on my school career, and you got to go after things you're interested in, because I would be sitting in a class and I would be doing everything in my power not to let any knowledge into my head from a guy who's sitting there trying to teach me. But then I would go to band, choir, all these different things that really interested me, and I was the top of my class.
Yeah.
So you gotta follow and just follow through on those things, and and like you said, you're so happy and willing to go out and pay for something and work your butt off for something you want to do.
Yeah. I used to, it's funny. It's like when my kid was growing up, I coached a lot of his sports, and obviously being in sports growing up as a kid, I one thing I would tell parents all the time when they were, why isn't my kid starting, or why is my kid not, the best kid out there? And I go, you can't coach height, you can't coach speed, and you can't coach ambition or passion. It's like, if somebody wants it and they're interested in it, then they're going to become it if they want it, and make it their mission to do it. And as much as you want little, Bobby to be the greatest center fielder ever, he may not be it, and that's okay. Let him go find something else. So, but you got to have that passion. You got to have that belief that that's what the drive, and those people are the people that win, in my experience. Yeah.
Well, I got, it reminds me of, is Brant your only child?
He is our only child.
Okay. Yeah. We have Johnny.
21.
Yeah. 21. Yeah. We have Johnny. He's our only child. And I'm thinking back to, when I was going through school, and, I'm a big guy. So my football coach in that small town saw me coming and goes, "Oh, this is going to be great. Zink's going to be awesome." Until I put on a football helmet and he saw that I was a big wuss. he just was like, "Oh no." I swear to God, I was like a 300-pound cheerleader on the sideline watching everybody else play. But the cool part was my coach, who also went to the Methodist church where I grew up, was just a great guy. And he and his wife absolutely loved listening to me sing and see me perform music. And he just got me, and he never came down on me, and it's just like, there was one day I was sitting and I had my drumsticks with me, and I was practicing something with my Walkman on, listening.
Yeah.
And he came up and grabbed the headphones off my head, and he goes, "I've never seen somebody so bad at football and so good at music." And then he put my earphones back on, and he walked away. And I said, "That dude gets me."
Yeah.
And it's a respect thing. It's just like, oh, thank God somebody gets me, because for a kid at that age, that's a really important thing for an adult to give you some kind of recognition, because
Sure.
I thought he would have hated me.
Absolutely. Well, that's good that you found that person. I mean, that's so rare.
Yeah, it is. And those people are still great friends to this day, and comment on every picture of Johnny on Facebook and stuff like that. So it's always cool to see shout out to Coach Knurlberger and his wife. So you and I are both 80s kids.
We are.
And who are some of your favorite 80s bands?
I have just such an eclectic music thing, but I would tell you, like, growing up for people that didn't grow up in Midwest, they don't realize that a lot of the radio stations in town, you only had one radio station, and it was programmed where, in the morning it was the farm report, and and then you had, like the, school report, like is the
Trading Post. You got to have the Trading Post.
And there was, after lunchtime, through like drive time, they'd be playing, kind of the pop rock, kind of thing, and then some country. I mean, they would mix whatever anybody called in. For a lot of the stations, they would just call it in, and they would play it. And once in a while, there would be like an hour dedicated towards rock or this or whatever like that. And I was fortunate. I grew up in a house where there was music playing all the time, so I just got to hear lots of different things, especially from my older brothers. But I remember we were fortunate because we lived in town when cable showed up. And we were like, I was like one of the only kids at school that actually had cable. So Friday and Saturday nights, my basement would be loaded, and we'd be watching, Night Tracks or Night Flights, which was like the precursor to MTV.
Exactly.
And it was, got to see this, blonde-haired guy we kept saying his name was Bono, but it was Bono, doing U2, and then there was NXS, and then I was big in the new wave, David Bowie's, original stuff that they were showing. So yeah, it was a lot of new wave, 80s stuff, but you couldn't go to prom in the Midwest without probably hearing AC/DC 20 times during the prom, like that, but probably half the stuff you play during your sessions, I listen to, still. And if you jumped in my car today and turned it on, most likely the 80s music channel is probably blasting in my car right now still.
Well, like I told you before, the technical guy that does all the behind the scenes stuff for this podcast is my keyboard player for the band. And it's like, we sit around and talk, it's like, I guess we're probably sounding like the old guys now, like our parents used to be, where our music was awesome and all this music today sucks.
Yeah, exactly. What are these kids listening to?
Yeah, what's wrong with these kids?
Yeah.
But it was such good music. I mean, it was just so awesome. Think back to the 80s when, the biggest thing we had to worry about was like a nuclear bomb falling on us, and like they're writing all this music like, hey, let's party like it's 1999.
Well, it's funny is like if you remember the Fix, Red Skies at Night, and Ultravox, Reap the Wild Wind, and different things like that, it was really about nuclear fallout. And you'd have people dancing in the clubs and going crazy over these songs, and it was because we lived with the Soviets and the U.S. pointing nuclear warheads at each other, and so, but somehow that ended up in the dance clubs, and so I always thought that was very funny.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great time to be into music and a great time to grow up. It's like I was watching the other night, with Johnny, gonna be in that formidable age here in the next couple of years. I worry about social networking and all this stuff, and I watched this show called The Social Dilemma, and just watching the way some of these algorithms work behind the scenes at these companies just scares the living hell out of me. It's like we had a much more innocent way to grow up, where everything is at their fingertips today. And I was wondering, how is it with, you said Brant is what, 21?
Yeah.
So how does it go as an executive coming up through the ranks, raising a kid, putting the time aside for family? How do you balance all that stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, I would, and not like, hey, cry for Troy, because it's, I made conscious choices along the way and everything like that. But I would say Brant, between born and probably like 12, he got a lot of dad's time and everything, more of dad's time and things like that. When they start being 12, they start, their social circuit becomes different, and their, coaches in school and teachers and band and everything else, start becoming a bigger part of their life. But I was very fortunate that I had bosses who, I could go to and say, I didn't have this kid to be a bystander. I'd like to coach Little League, and I will come in early and I will stay late on those other days, and I'll make this work. And so I just made sure that it was a priority that that I could put time into those things, or I could be there for those school events, or make sure I show up for that concert, and just be present as best you can be. But there's also the other side of that coin where I showed up in Silicon Valley and started working in startups and going up the ramps and everything like that, where more and more of my time was starting to get sucked out to be an executive and everything like that. And so it's a tough line. I mean, there's days where I think, I'll tell you a good story. I mean, I was like about 45 years old when it happened. And I would one day I just hit the most depressive wall that you could imagine. And I was just a wreck. And I just got promoted to vice president for my first time. And would you think you'd be the happiest person in the universe?
Right.
And everything. And I was just miserable. And I started talking to people and talking to Carla, my wife, and everything like that. And what I landed on is I call it the case of the should-ups. I should be doing this. Like when I was at work, I was mad at myself because I should be with my family. I should be doing this. And when I was at home, with spending time with my kid, I was a miserable bastard because I was like, oh, I should be working on my career and I should be at that meeting and everything like that. And it's the duality of growing and becoming an executive and growing further into your business road map. It's challenging, and you have to make sure that you're selfish into being able to block time out when you have to and be present when you have to. But you're probably better off to interview Carla and Brant to tell you if I was good at it. But there was times I failed at it, and but we started getting into different things. Like Carla's not shy of telling me when what I'm doing right or falling down at, but we make compromises. Like if we went on vacation, I was convinced she would pick only locations that had the world's worst Wi-Fi. And I was allowed to check my email in the morning, and then my computer would get locked up in the safe. And I wasn't allowed to touch it until the next day or whatever like that. And there was just, you kind of start setting some ground rules about it. But it's funny, and especially with joining Roku, 8 years ago, what a rocket ride we've been on, and the amount of hours it takes in order to grow a company and to be a winner in that space, but also to be really good at what you do. It's a challenge. It is definitely a challenge to keep that balance. I wish I had a magic answer for it, because once in a while you'll hear like Jeff Bezos or somebody, pontificate about, the perfect way they do life balance and everything. And then 2 minutes later, they're getting a divorce, and stuff like that. And
I don't think there is a perfect answer for it. And I ask just about every person I do the podcast with almost the same kind of question, because for me, it's getting ready for the years I'm going to go through with Johnny.
Yeah.
But for every person who's tuning in, we're all going through the same stuff. Yeah. So I just like to get different points of view from each person and let each person take what they can from it. And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer for anything. Just like to dig into each person.
Yeah. I'd also say, I tell dads all the time, I go, your first 12, 13 years are the most important years. And after that, for a period of time, their friends and their social network are more important than you are. And you better have gotten all your life lessons and helped instill a lot of character into someone by that time, because of social media, because of drugs, because of girlfriends, whatever, there's going to be a lot of challenges that will erode that character. So you better be there, and you better continue to be that guiding, obviously being present and everything. But, there's this time and period that we all went through it where we thought our dads were the dumbest things in the universe, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, they became geniuses again. And you do your best, but I'd say help build that character now, because that's going to pay off.
You talked about it before, but how did you get started as a recruiter?
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, another accidental tourist moment in my career. It's like I was working for the Marriott Corporation, and back in Chicago, and not in the hotel division. I was in another division of theirs, but one day they asked me, it was like coming up in the wintertime, and they needed somebody to go do college recruiting to all the universities in the Midwest. And I was young, single, and I was like, okay, let me see if I understand this right. You're going to give me money, and I'm going to get to go out to all the colleges and talk to co-eds. And I was like, sounds like a great job. I can go do that. And so
perfect.
So I went out, and that's what I thought recruiting was, going visiting schools and talking kids to come work for the Marriott Corporation. And I was like, oh, that's great. I can do this. This is easy. And then when I got back, I was just kind of consciously going, yeah, I think I want to do this recruiting thing. And I started in the person I worked with, her uncle owned a search firm and specialized in engineering. And I said, could I go talk to him? Would you introduce me and everything like that? And I went there, and in 5 minutes, I realized I knew nothing about recruiting, what I thought recruiting was. And this was a retained firm, and they were doing high-end engineering. And I don't want to say it was like Glengarry, Glen Ross kind of thing, like, first place gets a car, the second place gets steak knives, third place gets fired kind of feeling. But you could smell it in the air that it wasn't
pretty close.
It was pretty close to it back then. And they just, and they liked me, and they kept coming back and interviewing. And now I realized what they were doing. Back then, I had no idea what they were doing, but they were just seeing how resilient I was. And like every time I'd go in, and they'd yell at me and tell me how stupid I was and all this stuff, and come back next Tuesday. And what they were trying to do is build up, like, could I take rejection? And right. I just wasn't smart enough to figure that out, that's what the lesson. I just thought they were jerks to me. But I finally found a firm that it kind of resonated with me, and I started doing, again, stupid luck, because I'd worked for, as I mentioned to you, I was working in restaurants when I was in college, and working in management for Marriott. I knew all the equipment, I knew all the chemicals and things like that. And there was this firm that was looking for a recruiter that knew all of that information, and they would teach me recruiting. But I already knew all the companies, and I knew all the chemical, I knew all the salespeople, I knew how the business worked. And so I started doing mid to senior level positions in sales and marketing in the specialty chemical industry, which was basically thinking of 50-gallon drums of Windex or stuff like that. As you can hear, my dog is barking in the background, and
man, my dogs are barking.
No, that was my dog, and even though they were not supposed to do that, but there's working at home. But anyhow, it was working with Colgate-Palmolive, companies like that did specialty chemicals, and that's how I cut my chops in recruiting. And it was 100% commission. I thought every week I was going to get fired, and after about a year, I said I would never work in a job that wasn't 100% commission, because I thought it was the fairest proposition. You eat what you kill, it's just like, I could do this in my sleep, and got really good at it. And then met my wife, Carla, and that's when we decided to move to Denver. And I switched to another firm in Denver doing tech recruiting and in sales and marketing. And Denver was fun, but it wasn't home. We were going to move back to Chicago, and
just a layover.
And I was going to open up my own firm back in Chicago. And I had a friend who was the VP of HR, and she said, hey, before you open up your own firm, you should go work inside of a company and understand how companies make decisions. Because it's very interesting when you're in recruiting, is that, you point your finger at hiring managers and people and going, gosh, you're screwed up. You guys don't know how to make up your mind in decision making. And then the hiring manager points their finger back at the recruiting firms going, yes, you're screwed up. You don't know how I think. And, there's just this disconnect. And so I really went for an education for like about a year or two in my mind. Carla's parents lived out in the Sacramento area in California. So to kind of placater, I think I sent maybe 1 or 2 resumes. And of course, this is the height of the .com boom. I don't even know if I hit sent, and I had 2 offers, and I ended up at a startup storage company. They wanted someone to manage their recruiting team and build them, and they were getting lots of money from Deutsche Bank and everybody. And as far as I knew, coming into Silicon Valley, everybody was millionaires, so that's what I was going to come be. And so came here, and about 6 months later, the .com implosion happened, and I was sitting in my car thinking I'm about to be homeless because no one was hiring. Everybody was doing mass layoffs and stuff like that. And I had all of a sudden the CEO walked into my office, and I go, "Oh, here it comes. I'm about to get fired." And he goes, "Hey, we still have money and we still have to hire engineers, but we just let go all the HR people, and you can stay, but oh, by the way, you have to do all this HR stuff." And I go, "Did you look at my resume? Because I don't know any of this stuff." And he's like, "Anybody can do HR. It's easy." And so, and then 3 months later, that was 9/11. And then, we had people in New York and around the world. So it was like one calamity after another going on. And there wasn't a book, a consultant, a lawyer, anybody who would talk to me. So many people helped me along the way. I would call HR. I was young and stupid. I had no idea. I'd call HR heads at big companies, and they felt sorry for me, and they would talk to me, or they would let me talk to one of their junior people. And what I really got was my MBA in HR work just during that time, because I was just doing everything because I had to feed my family. And
right.
So I was just learning it. And I got really good. And, the one nice thing, it was an international company, but it was private. So I could goof up things and not go to jail, which was pretty good. I don't think I would look good in orange. And but I got really good at doing layoffs in all countries around the world, because that's the companies where were just falling apart. And then I got hired at Network Appliance, NetApp at that time. They were about to go through a big hiring spree, and so I was managing a big chunk of their staffing group there. And then, but I
what
realized,
year were you there?
2003, 2006, I think, if I remember right.
Okay. Yeah, one of my first jobs when I first moved to California, I did a 6-month contract at NetApp, but I think that was like 2008, 2007, something like that.
Okay.
That was my only touch at working internally at a company. I've been with firms my whole life, and I figured out in that 6 months that was not for me. It's
not for everybody, that's for sure. And but what I realized during that period of time, because I was, you could drop me in, I could build staffing teams about anywhere. What I found out is I really was missing the HR part, because HR to me was really problem solving, and I found that work really interesting. And so I got hired at another company to be like a director for their HR business partner, but also I had to build their staffing team up. That was interesting. I got to do that again. And then, I don't know, about a year into the job, one night the CFO calls me and says, "Hey, we're about to, we're going to let go of the HR head, and we want to promote you to head up HR." And again, I kind of did you read my resume? Because I think the first job I need to do, if you do promote me, is to fire you, because I wouldn't hire me to do the job. And they were like, yeah, you're great. We love you. And so that really became my big first really thing into HR, and leading. That was a public company, and did a lot of different acquisitions. So I got really good at being how that part of the animal works too. And then it was crazy. We did a lot of acquisitions. One day we got acquired, so all of a sudden I became the odd man out in the process, and which is kind of different. And doing consulting work for a little bit, and then one day I got called by a recruiter saying there's this little company in Saratoga, California, Roku. And I said, is that the sushi place? And they were like, oh, no, streaming TV, it's going to be big. And I'm like, yeah, I was the first person who bought Google TV. And 2 weeks later, it was sitting on the shelf in my house. And I was
Right.
like, yeah, they were saying they just need someone for a month, maybe 2 months tops. They just fired their HR head and they're not even sure if they want HR. Could you come over? There were about 100 people at that time. And, 1 month turned to 2 months, which turned to 6 months. And 8 years later, we're doing over $1 billion in revenue, one of the most successful IPOs of 2017, leading the streaming space, in the US and about to explode internationally. So it's just, I don't want to say an accident, but God's taken very good care of me along the way. But he's smart enough to know that I'm not smart. So he gives me like one choice. Like this one company called me named Roku, and not two other companies. Because if two other companies called me, I probably would have made the wrong choice. But I got that choice, and it's been unbelievably successful and just a wild rocket ride for us.
Well, those offices in San Jose down by the airport are awesome.
They are very awesome. There's 750,000 square feet of empty cubes right now. We cannot wait to get people back into those buildings.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate. I mean, my team is, besides HR and staffing, I also have all of the workplace services and teams, and was very fortunate. I got to see that campus built up, and it's gorgeous. It's really nice, and the employees really like it, and we'll get back there someday.
How quickly after COVID hit were you guys like 100% remote with everybody?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I remember when I was talking to the board of directors during this time, I had like a little histogram of how fast things change. And one thing's about, when you look at competencies of people, of can you handle ambiguity, and how agile can you be in your thinking process? We had, I was in China in December, and there was reports of unusual cases of pneumonia in December. In January, something was going on in Wuhan, and doors were being shut, and the military was kind of getting escalated into Wuhan. And March 15th, we all left our buildings and disappeared into our homes. I mean, that was like 90 to 120 days. The world changed real fast for everybody. And I remember those 2 weeks leading up to March 15th was we started seeing telling people you probably shouldn't be flying. If you fly this, every day the rules were changing, because if you remember right, it was like, well, it's just the flu. It's nothing big, or it's, we're not sure what it means. And, but every day the rules were changing on us. And so we started pulling core team groups together to, managing what's our response? What do we have to do? What would we have to do if we had to close an office and everything like that? And every day it was escalating. And on, I would say March 12th, I think it was March 12th or March 11th, we did a dry run at Roku. We shut down we told everyone to go home one day. And we wanted to break every system. If internet failed, if whatever, we wanted to hemorrhage things. And because that way we knew if we had to do this, what we needed to fix right now. And it was really lucky that we did that, because 3 days later, we were all running to the exits across the place. And so it was a lot of challenge. In those first 60 days is probably the most I've ever, in that 60-day period, probably the most hours I've ever worked in my lifetime. And just every day the rules were changing. Every day somebody was getting sick. What do we do? How do we respond? I remember, I've got a slide of this, is we thought if this lasted more than 90 days, productivity would start to degrade, and this would start impacting our business negatively. Should we start thinking about salary cuts? Should we start doing layoffs? I mean, there was all the doomsday scenario you were planning. Oh, yeah. And it turned out, a lot, because I think our culture is strong, and the people that we hired, our people became very productive and maintained productivity. There's degradation. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but we've been I think our people have stepped up and been highly productive, and our business has continued to do extremely well during this time. So Roku's been very fortunate.
Yeah, it's been an interesting learning experience for all of us. I've got a client of mine who is a very large financial services company, and he's in charge of security. And I met with him about 2 weeks before COVID shut everything down, and he went radio silent for about 3 weeks because they had to move 7,500 people in India who worked in offices to working remotely in about a week's time.
Yeah.
And he said, these people have never worked remotely before. So across the world, everything just changed like that. And
absolutely,
it's pretty amazing to, see how everybody has just bounced back that quickly, and how everybody is just kind of rolling with the changes to make sure that, they're productive and that they're doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, companies have gone through little, same as us, we've kind of gone through little shifts. Is that, the first thing was kind of like the food, clothing, shelter approach. Like, do you have your computer? Can you get out, can you work from your kitchen table, or someplace, and then you have Wi-Fi at home, and everybody was like, whoo, people could still work. And then it became, well, I need a chair. I need a printer. I need this, and so that was the next phase. And then it was like, someone got sick, and we think they were in the office and they might have exposed other people. And then you respond to that. And then all of a sudden it was like, my kids are home from school and I'm working, and I got to educate my kid and do all these different things. So it's been a lot of things. And then there's some people that it's isolation for them. It's, we have lots of employees that don't have families and everything like that. And, you've taken them away from the herd, their friends, their coworkers and things like that. And, I've got a lot of people who, will reach out to us and say, like, I need to come back into work, just mentally, this is really tough for me. And even to the point, there's some people who would probably be willing to, take their chances against COVID, because the mental part of this is so tough for them. And I think every HR person is struggling with this, and every company is trying to figure out how do you mentally health support your employees during these times also. It's a challenge. And then you throw out there all the social unrest that happened over the last few months too. You had, you had riots, you had, employees demanding, what are you going to do as a company for inclusion and diversity and social injustice? And it was like, every day there was like, didn't I just get over coronavirus? And now there's this next thing. And then
you're like, what's next?
What's next? And I joke with people at work. I go, I hope we don't, come 2021, we never look back at 2020 like the good old days. It's like, because that'll suck.
No. I saw this great meme. It's the picture of Marty and the doctor from Back to the Future.
Yep.
And Doc's standing there next to Marty, next to the DeLorean, and says, Marty, whatever you do, don't set this for the year 2020.
No, we can skip that one.
So Roku is, like I said before, a cool company. What is the latest and greatest that you guys are coming out with right now?
Sure. I mean, this is our Super Bowl time of the year, when you start
getting ready for the holidays.
That's the big thing. I mean, what's really interesting is like, you think about how like, companies like Walmart and the Costco's and the Targets and Amazon and everybody, how they used to look at, the day after Thanksgiving was usually like when the big Christmas rush is going on. And now, retailers aren't sure about like, what will Christmas shopping look like? Will malls be open? Will, how many people are we allowed in the stores? And so you're starting to see a lot more internet specials starting earlier this year. Amazon Prime just had their big Prime days and things like that, which is really interesting. But I guess our big things is, product wise, is we just released our, the new Ultra, which is one of the best streaming players you can get for under $100. It's really designed for people that are really big streamers, and just really great product. But one of the things I'm very excited about is one of our sound bars that we're releasing, where you have a streaming. You can hook this up to your existing TV, and there's a Roku technologies in there, so you can start streaming using your sound bar. So got some great things. As a public company, and I have to be careful what I say right before earnings, but I always tell people is like, there's going to be some really, every year we come up with some really great great opportunities for our customers through the retail channels during the holiday seasons at great prices and great values. And I would tell you, there'll be some good ones. People will be excited about that. But I don't know if we'll have the videos of people trying to kill each other this year over buying a Roku TV that some years we see in Walmarts. But because we don't know how shopping will be, but we see a lot of people shopping online. And we're also seeing, I think, what thing that's really interesting is, our business has done well during this time, and it's a lot because it's, a couple different factors. One is we always knew people would start streaming. Our thesis was, one day all TV would be TV advertising would be streamed, and that's always been our belief. And what you're seeing, and we've seen like people starting to cut the cable, get rid of cable, maybe stop watching terrestrial TV, but they want to start streaming, and more people are catching on to this, and we're the leader in this space. And more people stream in hours in North America than our competition on Roku, so we're in a really good position for that. What's really interesting is you're seeing, though, because people are at home at first, people started streaming a lot more just because it was their escape. Maybe they could watch news or something. It gave them escape from all the craziness of the world. But you're also seeing that, there are people that maybe someone lost their job in their family or something, or some economic impact because of the quarantine, and they can't afford a big expensive cable bill. And so, but they can afford Roku, of having over 10,000 channels of entertainment on it. So all it's done is it's sped up the adoption of streaming for us, and we're very fortunate in the place that we're in right now as a company.
Cool. So what I like to do is talk to people about, as we're getting kind of closer to the end here, few questions that kind of go into what inspires you. And there's always people who run through our existence, our past, our current. Who is the person, or maybe persons, in your career or in your life who have most inspired you?
Sure. I mean, gosh, I have lots. I've been very fortunate to bounce into lots of people that have taken pity on me and helped me along the way. And similar to you, I would say that, growing up in the Midwest, I had lots of coaches and lots of teachers that, encouraged and inspired. I mean, I went to, I tell people that the high school I graduated from, my graduating class was 75 people. And 10 of us went to college, which was the most anybody had ever sent. Any of those previous programs had gone to college. And, I was set, and not to demean it, because I've lots of family members that went through the military. I was meeting with the military recruiters. I was, trying to figure out should I go work in the factory, or what was the next step for me. But I had teachers and counselors and coaches that just were like, yeah, you're made for bigger things, get out of town and go to college and everything like that. So I think those were first steps for me. But, from a professional standpoint, I mean, the first firm I worked for, a guy named Michael J. Hawkins, taught me everything about recruiting, and he was a former VP of, executive sales and, for a company, and, taught me how does sales work and how the ropes work. But I think once I got to Silicon Valley, there's a guy named Alan Cherry, who was the first guy to hire me and gave me a chance. And he was a great mentor. And, I can tell you, someone coming from the firm side going inside to a company, we can scare the daylights out of everybody because we're working at speed. We're working at, I got to get this deal going and moving and things like that. And you can scare a lot of people inside a company. And
that's exactly what I did.
Exactly. It's like, look, I gave you that resume 5 minutes ago. Why haven't you read it yet? It's like, come on, time, speed, time kills. Let's move, yep. And so he got me to settle down a little bit, but he also was fortunate. Like, besides, he knew I knew staffing and he trusted me on that. And, but I didn't know HR, and like, he would just give me things or stuff to read, or like, he goes, hey, I'm going to go talk to this person about this problem. Why don't you come along and sit in and listen and things like that. So I think he saw that there was something in me that I didn't see in myself, and just started helping me along the way. And I was fortunate he hired me in 2 companies and taught me a lot in the beginning. But then what's funny is, like, once you start getting moved up further, all of a sudden you're working with the CFOs and the CEOs and board members, and they start influencing a lot of your mentoringship and your maturation as an executive. So I've been fortunate along the way. When I was at Cimex, I would say Rex Jackson was a great CFO for me, who really helped me understand, really kept things in perspective, but also helped me understand business, and the side of the world a lot better. I've been very blessed at Roku. I mean, Anthony Wood, my CEO and my boss right now, the one really cool thing about working in Silicon Valley, you get to work with some super genius people. And, Anthony, founder, entrepreneur, engineer, super genius, way of, doing things. But, he's somebody that I've been very fortunate, because he looks at, entrepreneurs and really smart folks like that. They look at problems differently. It's really easy for sometimes you get taught, like, this is the way the world looks at a problem and this is the way you solve it. Whether it's Anthony or Elon or Musk or whoever, they tend to look at problems differently and solve them differently. And it really gets you to challenge yourself to look and solve problems differently. And so I've been very fortunate with that. And now I think I'm in a fortunate position where, my nickname at Roku is Uncle Troy, because I'm like, I'm the person that sits down with the folks and I implore the advice to them, or be their mentor, or, tell them when they're goofing up and how to change paths and stuff like that. So hopefully it's gone full circle, and I'm entering a new stage where I get to help other people and along the way.
That's what it's all about.
Yep.
So, if someone's looking to kind of climb the ladder right now, someone's looking to better themselves or kind of get into a level of position where they're in mid-level management, senior management, what is your advice for someone like that kind of wants to aspire to get to a higher level in their HR career?
Well, great question. I didn't have the normal HR high background, and a lot of people, they go to school for HR, they do their internships in HR, and they learn chunks of HR and things like that, which there's times where I wish I did it, because I don't know certain, competencies in HR that I wish I did, but I learned I go hire people that are really smart and know how to do that stuff, and they educate me and the thing. And I would say anything, whether someone's a management or an individual wants to be a super great individual or a great manager and grow up that path is kind of different. I think even though we tell people, you don't have to be a manager of people or whatever, we kind of still ingrained in people that, hey, if you want to make money, if you want to grow, if you want to be important, you need to manage people. And you need to build teams and things like that. And the truth is, some people just suck at doing that, and they shouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And what they should do is what is about your work that you like to do, and be passionate about that and follow that path. So I think there's 2 road models. There's, if you're going to be the greatest individual contributor, then be comfortable with that. and go full steam and educate yourself and talk to people that you would never think of talking before to educate yourself in that. If you're going down the management path, and especially in HR, I would tell you, and I'm biased because it's kind of what I believe in. Other people may have a different idea, but I think a lot of times people look and they hire HR people and they try to then teach them business. And I always tell, go find business people and teach them HR. It's much, I just think, you have to, the people that are really successful in HR, they know how to solve business problems. They're just solving it through doing HR and understanding people, understanding feedback, understanding culture, different things like that. How do you get the managers that you're partnering with? How do you escalate? How do you elevate them? How do you get them to scale? That's a powerful thing for an HR person, whether you're an individual person or a manager. But I'd say if you're growing up in management, no matter whether you're in HR or another group, it's changed for me over time. I mean, when I first got into management, and if you'd ask me what's the most important thing, I would say communication, giving clear understanding of what's out there, what's expected of everybody. That was the most important thing. And then a few years later than that was, it changed. I went like, no, you need to be the smartest bulb on the tree, and you need to educate yourself on every single thing. And I realized, no, that was really flawed. That wasn't what you should aspire to. And, where I'm at kind of like right now in my life is like, I tell people, like, moving up the management chain, you have to be someone that is extreme. You have to really embrace self-awareness, and you really have to embrace that humility of, I may not be the smartest person or anything like that, but I need to surround myself with better people than me. And sometimes managers get really insecure, and they try to hire people that at their level or a notch below because it keeps them in the alpha position. And I'm the opposite. I mean, you cannot grow, you can't get promoted as a leader unless you've got good people to replace you or good people to prop you up along the way. And so I think I've been very fortunate to be self-aware, and I encourage people to be that self-aware. Don't be afraid of over-hiring people. Don't be afraid of admitting you don't know it, and you put somebody in a position that's really super duper smart of it. People will reward you and remark about how smart of a leader you are, because you went out there and you built a super great team to help the company scale, to help the problem solve, and you just elevate with it.
I love that.
Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, I love it. It's exactly kind of the growth that I went through. I had at one time I thought I could do it all in starting a company of my own.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find out real quick that, okay, I've grown to this level. I just can't get past this. Why can't I get past this? Well, you don't know what you don't know. And then you go out and start hiring really good, smart people. Sky's the limit after that, and then it's just.
Yeah. When I first became the head of HR, I thought I had to know everything. And so I was working crazy hours, and I became really protective of information. I would keep it to myself because I was afraid people would realize I didn't know something or whatever like that. I was really afraid of people finding out I wasn't as smart as they thought I was. I was just like, I was fooling everybody. And as long as I keep this to myself, they won't know I'm fooling them. And what I realized, and when I try to tell, when I coach managers and people now, it's like, look, I give you no credit. No one should have given me, Troy Fenner, credit back then for being good and getting stuff done, because I was doing it on my own. What Troy should be given credit for is I've given you resources. And I've given you objectives, and your job is to manage the resources that you have been given and solve the problems, not to go out there and do the problems yourself. If you're doing those problems and fixing those things yourself, then you've got a bad team. You need to go fix your team, because you have to build that team really strong. And the other thing is, I'll have someone come to me and say, well, I want to be promoted. And I'll be like, do you have your replacement? And they'll be like, Well, no. And I'm like, well, you didn't do a good job building your team then, so why would I promote you? It should be, someone should be shoving you upwards because they're ready for your space and you should be comfortable in it. You should be high-fiving that person for doing it. It just makes you look good, but you still get so many people insecure about it.
That's awesome advice. I love it. I've got one more question, and this is a question I ask to every person who's on the True Ambition podcast. So the True Ambition podcast, the quote comes from, everybody knows this about me. I'm 6 years sober, and through the AA program, I found this quote that changed my life about 5 years ago. And it says that true ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is the profound desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. That changed my life because I've always been ambitious. Everybody I talk to on this podcast are ambitious people. For me, when I read that, my perspective kind of changed and my direction changed as far as when I was younger, my ambitions were to get money, were to get girls, were to get power, to get whatever it was that my heart desired. What I took from that quote was to live usefully and humbly under the grace of God and do things for other people. So that kind of changed me. So this whole podcast is kind of about true ambition. Has nothing to do with recovery. I just wanted to go out and talk to people and maybe help some other people out that are trying to find an answer in their life. So my question to you to end the podcast today is, knowing what you know now, being where you've been, what is your true ambition in two places? Your true ambition in your career and your true ambition in your personal life.
Wow. And I've got 30 seconds to answer all of this. It's like the miscongeniality
the great
question.
thing about a podcast, you can talk all night long if you want to.
Good. Why don't you pause me? I'm going to walk in the other room and Google the answer or something for a second. Well, first, in all sincerity, awesome blessings to you and your family for 6 years of sobriety. That is awesome for you guys.
Thank you.
And that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of courage just to talk about that. So good for you, John. It's funny. I think I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in this, is that my crossroad happened to me when, like I said, when I first got promoted to VP of I should be doing something all the time. And, again, I would say you probably should talk to Carla, because she'd probably have better answers for this than me, because I get this from a professional standpoint. And it could, I don't want to just say it's this Midwestern thing in me or whatever like that, but I always have this voice of my mom and my dad in the back of my mind that I should be doing more. I should be working harder. There's, I have an executive admin that does schedules and things like that, and runs my world. And I feel absolutely embarrassed every time I talk to them, because it's just like, I know my mom in the back of my head is like, you lazy ass, you could go do that yourself, and stuff. So I'm challenged with that. But I'd say from a professional standpoint, I think I'm getting into a really, and not, just being as blunt honest, I would say the last 3 years have just probably not been the greatest example of my true ambition and everything like that, just because the world around us has just been so crazy, and an explosive IPO, explosive growth, the pandemic, and everything like that. But I think one of the things that I'm seeing on myself now is, as I jokingly say that Uncle Troy moment is, I'm getting more and more enjoyment and energy out of being able to stop now and help some of the junior people to, whether it's saying, hey, if you keep driving the car the way you're driving it, you're going to put it in the ditch, because I did it myself. So why don't you learn from me? Let me help you out there. So my ambition is to, I still want to see those people grow and be better. I'm also like, from a professional standpoint, average is like the most obscene word you could say to me. If you're going to give me fighting words, call me average. I just hate that. And so I'm still pushed by, I want to do great work. I want to work with super smart people and do things like that. But I don't know exactly what the next step is for me right now. But, I'm starting to, do a little bit more, advisory roles for companies who are coming and asking, like, how do you get through startup land and stuff like that. So I guess I get a lot of the enjoyment out of the experiences that I've went through to be able to help other folks of it. I joke all these gray hair and all the lack of hair that I have now, I earned every one of them along the way. And so my goal is to keep people from going bald. And from a professional standpoint, I'd say from a personal standpoint, my ambition is, it's if you could give me a little league team right now to go coach, I'd be in dream heaven. I'd like to get back. There's that part of me is like, I'd love to get back to that simple, fun times and things like that. But I'd say my biggest driver right now in these next few years is Carla and I are in a new stage of our lives. Where she's retired now, and I'm still in this mindset of what's next and what's the next job, or what's the next, how's Roku going to explode next, or things like that. So it's kind of like getting back to, who we are as a couple and everything like that. So that's kind of an interesting next phase for me and everything like that. But I think they're also kind of, I always find it funny where people were like, if I just had a better job, then my personal life would be better. If I found the perfect girl, then my job would be better, or like that. I think now I'm in that phase of trying to find balance between the two. And that's an exciting part, because when you start doing that, you start getting more fuel, more energy. The next cool thing's going to show up. And as I said before, I'm too stupid. God has to come to me with like one option, and then I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to go do and be passionate about. But I'm just very excited right now about all next stages and all next phases for me.
Well, that's a good spot to be in, and you're a good man. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate it, and I'm also looking forward to see what else Roku's going to do. I've got a couple of devices myself, and I appreciate the technology. So
keep streaming. That's what I tell everybody. Just keep streaming, and gets me closer to my retirement, John. Just everyone keep streaming.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate the time. Please give my best to your wife. And I'm sure we'll see you sometime either at the golf course or somewhere else, or I'll see you down at Roku when you guys get back in the campus. And I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
You're a great man. Thank you, and love your wife. And I can't wait to meet Johnny one day. It's like I think the last time I saw him, he's like this little sausage, and now he's walking around going crazy.
He's a big dude trying to crash everything in our house.
Nice. Hey, I would trade my wealth for those moments. Let me tell you, those are awesome times. Just soak them up. It's a blink of an eye.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you later, Troy.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
The True Ambition podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.
And I'll be your protector.